Rain poured heavily over the glowing city streets, blurring the lights into streams of silver and gold. Elena Moore ran through puddles, clutching her small handbag close to her chest, her jacket soaked and her hair sticking to her face. She had just finished her shift at a construction site where she worked part-time, carrying materials and cleaning floors to help pay her father's medical bills. She didn't have time to change or fix her makeup. The clock was ticking, and this blind date, arranged by her well-meaning best friend Sophie, was her only chance to feel human again after months of struggle. "Just go, Lena," Sophie had insisted. "He's different. Kind, successful, but down to earth. Who knows? Maybe he's the one." Elena had laughed then, but now, standing at the entrance of the upscale restaurant, she felt her confidence dissolve. The bright chandeliers reflected on the polished marble floors, and every guest looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. She, on the other hand, looked like she'd stepped out of a storm, which she had. As she approached the hostess stand, the woman behind the desk frowned politely. "Ma'am, are you sure you have a reservation here?" Elena's cheeks flushed. "Yes, for two, under the name Adrian Cole." The hostess hesitated, scanning the list, then gave a forced smile and nodded toward the back of the room. "Right this way." Every step felt like a walk through judgment. A couple at a nearby table whispered something that made them chuckle. Elena wanted to disappear. Her muddy shoes squeaked on the floor, leaving faint prints behind. She wished she could melt into the ground. At a corner table near the window sat a man in a perfectly tailored black suit. Adrian Cole, the CEO of one of the city's top design companies. His presence commanded attention effortlessly, with his sharp jawline, calm eyes, and expensive watch glinting under the light. He looked every bit the powerful man she'd read about in magazines. Elena froze. He was way out of her league. She considered turning around, maybe pretending she'd entered the wrong restaurant. But before she could move, he stood up. Every eye in the restaurant followed the scene. People expected him to look disgusted, to leave, or to call security. Instead, Adrian smiled, a small, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Hi," he said warmly, stepping forward and pulling out her chair. "You must be Elena." For a second, she forgot how drenched and messy she looked. His tone wasn't mocking. It was kind, and for the first time that night she felt seen. Elena sat down slowly, still catching her breath from the rain. The waiter handed her a menu, but her hands trembled too much to open it. She kept her gaze low, staring at the silver cutlery, embarrassed by the small puddle of rainwater forming under her chair. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft jazz music playing in the background. "I didn't mean to come like this. I just couldn't afford to miss work." Adrian studied her quietly for a moment. Most people, he thought, would have made excuses or simply not shown up. But there she was, honest, uncomfortable, yet unflinchingly real. "It's okay," he said gently. "You came. That's what matters." When she finally met his eyes, she saw no trace of mockery or judgment, only curiosity. "They told me you're a designer," he said, smiling slightly. "I was," she replied after a pause. "Before my father got sick. I used to design dresses for local boutiques. Nothing big, but it made me happy. After he was diagnosed, things changed. Rent, medicine, bills. I had to find quick work. So I take whatever job I can now. Cleaning, lifting, construction, waitressing." Her voice cracked slightly, but she forced a smile. "It's not glamorous, but it pays." Adrian leaned back, listening intently. He had attended countless dinners with polished women wearing diamonds and designer heels, but not one had ever spoken with such quiet bravery. There was something refreshing about her honesty, like rain washing away dust. "Do you ever draw anymore?" he asked. Her eyes softened. "Sometimes, when I can afford sketch paper. I still dream about creating designs that normal women can wear, not just models or millionaires. Something beautiful but affordable." He nodded thoughtfully. "That's a vision most companies lack." She chuckled nervously. "You sound like someone who owns one." He smiled but didn't answer. Maybe I just appreciate good ideas. The conversation drifted effortlessly after that. They spoke about small joys, favorite foods, childhood memories, and the little things that make life bearable. Adrian found himself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. To others, it might have looked like a strange pairing, a rain-soaked girl in worn clothes and a CEO in a $1,000 suit. But as the night unfolded, their worlds slowly blurred together. And in that candle-lit corner of the restaurant, what began as an awkward dinner started to feel like something rare, two souls meeting at just the right time. The next morning, Adrian Cole sat in his glass-walled office, the city skyline stretching endlessly behind him. He hadn't been able to stop thinking about the woman from last night, the one who had walked into that restaurant drenched, trembling, and yet full of quiet dignity, Elena Moore. He opened her profile, which Sophie, their mutual acquaintance, had emailed him before the date. She had studied fashion design, but had dropped out in her final year due to financial problems. Her portfolio link was broken, her resume outdated. But something told Adrian there was more to her than what was on paper. He pressed the intercom button. "Samantha," he said to his assistant, "schedule an interview tomorrow. Candidate name, Elena Moore. Position, junior designer." Samantha sounded surprised. "At Cole Design, sir?" "Yes," he replied, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Let's just say, I want to see what she's capable of." The next day, Elena arrived at the towering glass building of Cole Designs. She wore a simple cream blouse and a skirt she'd mended herself. In her arms, she carried her old, slightly frayed sketchbook, the one thing she'd never been able to give up. She had no idea the company belonged to the same man she had dined with the night before. To her, this was just another desperate attempt at finding a real job, a chance to start again. When she entered the sleek lobby, she felt small. The employees looked professional, confident, and well-dressed. She caught her reflection in the marble floor and took a deep breath. "You've got this," she told herself. "You've survived worse." Inside the design room, a panel of 3 judges awaited her. Adrian sat behind a tinted glass window in the adjoining observation room, hidden from view. He wanted to see her talent without the weight of his name influencing her. "Ms. Moore," one of the panelists said kindly, "we'd like you to design a concept dress, something elegant yet affordable. You have 1 hour. Elena nodded nervously and opened her sketchbook. Pencil in hand, she began to draw, not with hesitation but with pure instinct. Her lines flowed gracefully, forming a dress crafted from recycled materials, soft fabric panels, subtle layers, and modern cuts that gave beauty a new definition, sustainability with style. When she lifted her head, the room was silent. The panel exchanged glances, impressed. Behind the glass, Adrian's eyes softened. He had met hundreds of designers, ambitious, polished, and loud, but none of them had drawn from heart like this woman did. At that moment, Adrian realized Elena wasn't just talented, she was brilliant, and without knowing it, she'd just passed the most important test of all. A week later, Elena received a sleek white envelope with gold lettering. Her name, Elena Moore, was written in elegant script. Inside it read, "You are cordially invited to the annual Cole Designs Gala, celebrating innovation, creativity, and the people who make it possible." At first, she thought it was a mistake. Cole Designs, the same company where she'd just interviewed, the same place she still hadn't received a reply from. But at the bottom of the letter, one line caught her eye, written in familiar handwriting. "I hope to see you there." AC! Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be Adrian Cole? On the night of the gala, Elena stood before a mirror in her tiny apartment. She had spent 3 nights sewing the dress she would wear, the same design she'd created during her test. It was simple but stunning, an elegant white gown made from recycled satin and lace scraps, stitched with care and heart. It wasn't flashy, but it reflected her, real, humble, and beautiful in her own way. As she entered the grand ballroom, heads turned immediately. The same kind of whispers that once filled the restaurant now rippled through the air, but this time they weren't mocking. They were admiring. "Who is she?" someone whispered. "She's breathtaking," another said. Elena felt her knees tremble. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. Then from across the room she saw him, Adrian Cole, in a black tuxedo, standing confidently beneath a cascade of crystal chandeliers. Their eyes met, and the world seemed to quiet. He walked toward her through the crowd, every step measured, every gaze following him. When he finally reached her, he didn't say a word at first. He simply smiled and held out his hand. "Elena," he said softly, "I'm glad you came." She looked around, still unsure. "I didn't even know this was your company," she admitted nervously. He chuckled. "I wanted to see who you were without the pressure of my name. I needed to know if your art came from the heart, and it does." Then turning toward the audience, he lifted her hand and spoke into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "this is Elena Moore, the designer whose vision will redefine Cole Designs. And the woman who redefined my life." Gasps and applause filled the hall. Elena's eyes shimmered with tears. She had walked into a restaurant looking like a beggar, and now she stood beside the CEO who saw her worth before anyone else did, because true love doesn't recognize luxury or status. It only recognizes truth, heart, and courage.